Consider this back pay for every weekend I wasted playing nurse to our father. That was the digital parting shot my brother sent an instant before he gutted my life savings. I sat paralyzed in my car, staring at the notification on my dashboard. $0. A total of $212,000 had been swept out of my account in under 60 seconds. That money wasn't a luxury fund. It was the mobility grant, the hard-won settlement for my daughter, Chloe, to receive a specialized Neuralink procedure for her partial paralysis. It was her only ticket to walking without a heavy metal brace. The digital trail didn't lie. The destination was an encrypted vault linked to Leo's MacBook Pro. My own brother hadn't just committed a robbery. He had crippled his 10-year-old niece's future because he felt he'd put in enough family time to deserve a jackpot. I stared at the glowing screen, and for the first time in 34 years, the patient, forgiving sister died. In her place sat a senior cybersecurity analyst who had just identified a threat actor. Before I reveal how my daughter became the most feared strategist in this zip code, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I need to know who's standing with us. You're probably wondering the same thing the fraud investigators asked me later. Why would a woman who hunts hackers for a living give her deadbeat brother remote access to her primary accounts? It sounds like a lapse in judgment when you say it out loud. But family betrayal doesn't start with a heist. It starts with a narrative. For a decade, the story in our house was written in stone. Sarah is the cold one, and Leo is the loyal one. I was the villain because I took a high-paying job in the city to provide for my child. Leo was the martyr because he stayed in our childhood home, sacrificing his life to live in our father's guest house while doing the bare minimum for his care. It's a psychological cage I call the debt of success. It's when your relatives convince you that your achievements are an act of desertion, and the only way to make it right is to subsidize the lives of the people you left behind. I didn't add Leo to my accounts because I was a fool. I added him because I was drowning in the guilt they manufactured. I remember the exact moment it happened. It was 3 years ago, right after the construction accident that shattered Chloe's spine. I was in a hospital chair, vibrating with exhaustion, trying to manage a global security breach on my laptop while my daughter slept in a tangle of tubes. Leo didn't bring coffee. He didn't ask about Chloe. He stood over me and ranted about how his car's transmission had blown and he couldn't be expected to drive our father to physical therapy anymore. "I'm the one doing the heavy lifting, Sarah," he'd sneered, looking at my daughter's hospital bed as if her tragedy was a personal inconvenience to him. "You have the 6-figure salary. I have the burden. It's only fair." So I made him a secondary user. "Only for father's medical bills and your transport," I told him. It was hush money. I thought if I paid enough, the phone calls telling me I was a heartless careerist would stop. I didn't realize you can't buy a truce from someone who views your bank account as their personal inheritance. Over the years, emergencies became a joke. An emergency was a high-stakes poker buy-in on a Tuesday. An emergency was a designer watch because he needed to look the part for a job interview he never went to. An emergency was the down payment on a performance motorcycle that cost more than my daughter's specialized schooling. I saw the alerts. I watched the money drain, and I said nothing. I wore 5-year-old shoes and skipped vacations so Chloe could have her physical therapy, while my brother posted photos of 5-star steakhouse dinners paid for by my late-night coding sessions. I lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment while I paid the property taxes on our father's estate so Leo wouldn't have to get a roommate. I told myself I was being the bigger person. I told myself I was keeping the family intact. But looking at that $0 balance, the smoke cleared. I wasn't a sister. I was a hostage. I was paying a monthly protection fee just to be allowed at the Thanksgiving table. Leo didn't steal that money because he was in trouble. He stole it because he felt he had earned it by simply existing. He saw me as a bottomless ATM, a resource rather than a person. But he forgot one rule of the grid. When you kill the connection, the firewall goes up. He didn't just take the cash. He took the only reason I had to remain civil. I closed my banking app and opened my terminal. The grieving, guilty sister was gone. The woman who replaced her only cared about the counteroffensive. I pulled up the packet data. It was time to see exactly what Leo had been funding with my silence. I cracked my knuckles and logged into the forensic suite. For years, I had used these tools to dismantle international phishing rings and corporate spies. I never dreamed I'd be using them to hunt my own blood. I didn't just look at the transfer logs. I pulled the raw metadata. The screen flooded with cascading lines of green text. To most, it was gibberish, but to me, it was a GPS map to his soul. The money hadn't gone to a standard savings account. That would have been too easy. Instead, it had been bounced through a series of crypto tumblers designed to obfuscate the destination. But Leo wasn't a genius. He was a mimic who watched YouTube tutorials. I traced the final hop of the digital currency. It landed in a wallet owned by a shell entity called Apex Holdings Group. The name triggered a red flag in my professional database. I ran a cross-reference. Apex Holdings was a flagged laundry front for an illegal offshore sportsbook linked to organized crime in the Caribbean. My heart turned to ice. This wasn't just a family spat. This wasn't Leo buying a boat. He had wired nearly $250,000 directly into the hands of a sanctioned criminal organization. He had crossed the line from shady relative to federal felon. Wire fraud, money laundering, and providing capital to a known criminal enterprise. I leaned back, the blue light of the monitors reflecting in my eyes. Leo thought he was clever. He thought the anonymous nature of crypto would hide his tracks. Instead, he had handed me a loaded gun. He wasn't just a thief. He was now a high-value target for the Department of Justice. I kept digging. I needed his physical location. I pulled the telemetry from his smart watch, which was still linked to my family data plan. He had spent the afternoon at a high-end beach club 3 counties over. While I was sobbing in my car, he was ordering magnums of champagne. Then the door to my home office creaked. Chloe stood there, leaning on her crutches, her face pale in the darkness. She was only 10. But she had lived through enough surgeries to read a room better than most adults. "Did Uncle Leo take the medicine money?" she asked. Her voice didn't tremble, it was flat, precise. I wanted to protect her. I wanted to tell her it was a technical error, but we were past the point of fairy tales. "Yes," I said. "He took all of it." She didn't cry, she didn't throw a tantrum. She just stared at the screen, a cold, calculating look entering her eyes, a look she inherited from me. "Then make him regret it," she said. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. I realized then that we weren't victims anymore. We were the hunters. I had the where and the how. Now I needed the intent. In a federal courtroom, the difference between I made a mistake and I knowingly committed a crime is usually a single chat log. And Leo was incredibly sloppy. He still used the tablet I had bought him for Christmas, which was synced to my cloud storage. I opened the message backups. He had deleted the texts to his girlfriend, but he hadn't cleared the archived folder. I hit restore. "Leo, it's done. The golden goose finally laid the egg." "Girlfriend, how much?" "Leo, $212K, more than enough to disappear. Pack your bags, we're hitting the islands." "Sarah is too weak to do anything about it. She'll just cry and ask why." I stared at the words, golden goose. I wasn't a person to him, I was a mark. I wasn't a sister, I was a score. He wasn't stealing to survive, he was stealing to play. I took a screenshot, Exhibit A. Then I checked his GPS history for the previous day. He had told me he was spending the afternoon at the pharmacy getting our father's heart medication. The GPS showed he was actually at a racetrack for 6 hours. The timestamp on his "I'm so tired of caring for Dad" text matched a $5,000 loss at the betting window. It was pure entitlement. I felt a surgical calm take over. I created a folder on my desktop labeled The Audit. I dragged in the bank logs, the shell company ties, the chat transcripts, and the GPS maps. Chloe pulled up a chair next to me. "I know his secondary password," she whispered. "He used it when he let me play games on his tablet. It's the same as his high school football jersey number." I looked at my daughter and smiled. It wasn't a motherly smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just found its pack. "Let's go to work," I said. I didn't call the local police. Local cops write reports. They tell you to file a claim. They don't have the clearance to stop a high-speed digital wire heading for the Caribbean. But the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network does. I logged into my secure work portal. In my industry, we have a Priority 1 line for reporting suspected terrorism or organized crime funding. It's called a Suspicious Activity Report, SAR. When you flag a transaction with a foreign criminal proxy tag like the one attached to Apex Holdings, the system doesn't wait for a judge. It acts. I entered the transaction ID. I flagged the recipient as a high-risk criminal entity. I hit Submit. It was the digital equivalent of dropping a tactical nuke on Leo's life. Within minutes, the global banking system's interdict protocols triggered. They didn't just freeze the $212K. They locked down every single asset associated with Leo's identity. His personal accounts, his credit cards, even the crypto wallet he thought was invisible. Everything turned to stone. 10 minutes later, my phone vibrated. It was Leo. I let it ring. Once, twice, 5 times. I wanted him to feel the walls closing in. When I finally answered, I didn't say a word. "What did you do?" he shrieked. He sounded like a wounded animal. "Sarah, you crazy bitch, what did you do? My cards are declined. The bank says my identity is flagged for national security." "I don't know what you're talking about, Leo," I said, my voice soft and trembling, the perfect imitation of the weak sister he expected. "I just saw the account was empty. I thought we were hacked. I'm so scared, Leo. That was Chloe's surgery money." "You're lying," he roared. "I'm at the airport. They wouldn't let me board. They said my passport is suspended." "I need you here," I sobbed, forcing a fake hitch into my breath. "The feds are going to call me. Please, Leo. If you have the money, just bring it back. We can tell them it was a joint account error. Just come over and we can fix it before they arrest anyone." There was a long silence. I could hear his desperate breathing. He was trapped. He couldn't fly, he couldn't pay for a hotel, and he thought his only chance at the money was to convince me to withdraw the report. "I'm coming over," he hissed. "And you better have a damn good explanation for the bank, or I'm going to make sure you never walk again, just like your kid." The line went dead. I lowered the phone. My face was a mask of iron. I looked at Chloe. "Is the guest arriving?" she asked. "He's on his way," I said. I walked to the front door, unlocked it, and turned off the lights. I wanted the house to look like a place of mourning. He didn't know he was walking into a federal sting operation. The SAR report didn't just freeze his money. It alerted the regional field office. By the time Leo's motorcycle roared into my driveway, he wasn't just facing an angry sibling. He was walking into the arms of the state. He didn't knock. He kicked the door open. He marched into the living room, face purple with rage, his girlfriend Nicole trailing behind him looking like she wanted to vanish. "Fix it," he screamed, lunging toward me. "Call them now, tell them I had permission." I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just held up my laptop. "I can't do that, Leo, because the permission script was never written." I turned the screen toward him. It showed the Treasury Department's confirmation page. Case status, active. Subject, Leo. Charges, 18 USC $1,343 wire fraud. "When you moved that money to Apex Holdings," I said, my voice now cold and professional, "you didn't just steal from me. You funded a sanctioned criminal organization. You didn't send a transfer, you sent a flare to the FBI." Nicole gasped, backing away. "You ratted on your own brother." "He stopped being my brother when he decided my daughter's ability to walk was less important than his vacation," I replied. Leo lunged for the laptop, but the windows of the house suddenly exploded with light. Blue and red strobes flooded the room. Through the open door, I saw 4 dark SUVs skidding onto the lawn. Federal AG&TS dropped to the floor. The arrogance drained out of Leo's face in an instant. He looked small. He looked like the coward he had always been. I watched as they forced him onto the carpet. I watched the steel cuffs bite into his wrists. I watched Nicole start screaming that she didn't know anything before they even had her in the car. As they dragged him out, Leo looked at me, his eyes wide with a pathetic, childish plea. "Sarah, please. We're family." "You're a security threat," I said, and I just patched the hole. The house finally went quiet. The feds took my statement and the evidence drive. Because the money was flagged as part of a criminal investigation, it was recovered and returned to me within 48 hours. Leo was sentenced to 12 years in a federal facility. My father moved into a high-end, assisted living facility, paid for by the sale of the house Leo used to live in for free. People ask me if I feel guilty about destroying my family. I tell them I didn't destroy anything. I just performed a long-overdue amputation. Last week, Chloe had the surgery. Yesterday, for the first time in 3 years, she took 4 steps without her brace. Silence isn't lonely when it's finally peaceful.